Yep.
So let's start, and I've also gone live. So today, most interesting about three gunas. So let's investigate all the three gunas. So he says, he gives an introduction of it. Sattvam rajah tama iti gunaha prakriti sambhavaha nibadhanti mahabaho dehe dehasmin avyayam. So now let's understand these three division which is there, which is called as Maya. So the another name for Maya is Guna. So there is Brahman and there is Maya. Two things. Brahman is beyond these three gunas, but Maya is, or the illusion part, Mithya is the guna, which makes something not true to be perfectly true, and nobody can reject it. So this is the whole manifested world of Maya. So when we say manifested world of Maya, is that the five sense objects, even though they are inert and they are not having any movement, they don't exist next second, but still mind, which is fighting with the consciousness, wants to have that as much as possible. So it reflects itself, as in the case of memories. So it is not, it's a separate thing, it is not a same thing, it is not a particular object, or it is not something that can be compared to and contrasted to say that whether this is good or that is bad or something like that. In Ayurveda, they talk about Atma has these three gunas, which is sattva, rajas, tamas. They call the rajas and tamas as dosha and the guna as sattva, because Atma is supposed to just reflect upon, not take anything. But since it is clouded, it takes something, and then the roga will start to manifest, or the disease. So let's see what the sattva guna will do. This is the subtle one. Its job is to know. This is where the intellect comes into existence. So this is also called as antakarana, the inner sheath of existence, wherein it has the mind, the intellect, and the sukshma part of the five elements, and the sukshma part of the tanmatras, which is nothing but sukshma, that is subtle. So this five subtle element, along with the mind and the intellect, creates a purity of state, because they are subtle. Anything which is in subtle creates purity. Anything within gross creates distortion. So if we take between sattva and tamas, the same five elements are now in gross form. So there is attraction, there is repulsion, there is various ways of thinking and pondering and doing and all that, because it is at a very gross level. Whereas the sattva is pure because it is not contaminated. This contamination happens with klesha, and the kleshas are generated through movement, and that movement is the one which is called as rajas, which is related to acting. So this prana, that is from the consciousness, creates itself a thing called as prana, even though it is consciousness. That's like a battery in a mobile or a laptop or a battery operated whatever machine we think we can, other than the power being taken. It has its own powering ability. And they come with 5 organs of action, karma indriyas. So this subtle element, when attached with prana, starts to move and creates motion. So as it creates motion, the mind gets attached to it because it is moving, and that's what we don't want. So basically we are seeking for stability and security, which is sattva. Whereas when connected to the rajas, it starts to move. So this I comes into existence when movement starts. The subtle I, which we can call it as ahankara, starts with an identification because there is movement. So with whatever moves, I have to then say I. So there can be a past existence and a future in the mind, but it is not at a very gross level. Then comes to the tamas, the gross body, which happens due to the sattva and rajas going together. So that creates delusion. So when the consciousness entered into the womb, consciousness was not aware that this consciousness here is the directed consciousness which is connected with the mind, was not aware that a gross phenomena is going to happen. So we have the blastocyst happening and zygote merging and all of that. So we have names for that. But basically what is happening is that it is having the matter and the consciousness coming together to create the gross form in everything, whether animal or plant or humans or whatever it is, we have this grossness. And when there is gross, it has to be delusional, because one has to rely on the gross thing now. So in this delusion, there is a relationship. If there is no delusion, there cannot be any relationship at all. So sattva comes with no relation, rajas makes movement, and tamas sets relationship. So we create this nama and rupa for identification. Identification has to be created because we want to say what I was doing yesterday, what I am doing today, and what I will be doing tomorrow. These 3 states have to be identified. And because of that, it is tamas. It makes it gross. Because yesterday is a gross experience. Today, from morning till now, is gross experience of subtle intellect, but then it becomes gross intellect, because it can now go back and see what it was doing in its mind. So then it identifies itself that I was doing this, I was walking, I was doing yoga, I was doing that and this and all of that. So this tamasic portion of the 5 subtle elements gets to produce the 5 gross elements, and this is called as panchikarana. This is a Vedanta topic where there is something called panchikarana, which is there in Viveka Chudamani as well. So it gets grossed up. So now there is no way to see what the reality was. It is clouded now. So this physical world, which shows itself as true, is a gross manifestation of the subtle. But now we cannot see the subtle because we are so embodied into it. Now, what it is supposed to do in relation to consciousness? The antakarana can reflect the consciousness. That is, the subtle intellect and mind can reflect the consciousness. These are all the living beings, what we can call as living because of the consciousness. And because of the conditioning which got created due to the samskaras and karma and the vasana, which we looked into yesterday, these beings draw themselves to a gross physical body, which is made out of the same 5 elements which is in subtle form, but now given a gross structure based upon what the feeling and what the perception of that mind was. So consciousness just makes this experience possible. So this mind, which has got nothing to do with itself, gets conditioned to believe that it has something to do with itself and pulls the consciousness to direct things, and the consciousness then makes the decision to make this thing possible. So right now we have encased ourselves from a subtle body, which we call as Sukshma Sharira, which is the one which goes out at the time of death, and also called as Atma, soul, and all that. So this subtle body is now having a Panchikarana, that is tamasic attachment has been made for gross experiencing or gross experiences. So let's say there is a breeze. The breeze is not felt by the gross body, but is felt by the subtle body. And the subtle body can feel everything. So there is a feeling in the subtle body. So it can feel it as sukha and can feel also as dukkha. But the gross body neither feels sukha or dukkha. How can we experience this? Every night we experience this gross body going away. Nobody knows they have a gross body. All they can remember is that they were in a dream, which is nothing but the subtle body. And the subtlest, the antakarana, is the one which is very closer to consciousness. So that is the only one which is alive. The entire gross name and forms, which are part of the 5 sense objects, which was gross, became subtle and it disappeared. And because it disappeared, it cannot be reflected upon. So in the tamasic, this generally nidra, sleep. So the ignorance is at the highest. So every person, no matter what religion he belongs to, what culture he belongs to, what tradition he belongs to, what belief system he belongs to, whether he is an atheist or theist or whatever that naming is, when he goes to sleep, can never remember anything. No relationships exist in the subtle body at all, because consciousness has no relationship. So the subtle body also has no relationship. So none of us have homes, none of us have money, none of us have the wife and husband and all of that, none of us have jobs, none of us have anything when we go to sleep. Whether it's in the morning we sleep, or afternoon we sleep, or evening we sleep, or night we sleep, but whenever we go to sleep, starts with the subtle, so you go into dream state, and then the subtlest where the dream also ends and the antakarana takes over. So the subtle intellect along with the subtle mind, along with the subtle five elements, just exist as existence. But that is not seen. So when we say we are sentient beings, it's basically because the consciousness is making them sentient. It is not that I am sentient. This gross body manifestation is not sentient. It is just inert object. So the problem here is the inert and gross creation of name and forms cannot reflect the pure consciousness. And hence, if we look at any gross thing, it doesn't have an ego by itself. It cannot say I am. So in that sense, the rivers and oceans and stones do not have a sense of ego because there is no sense to sense. There are no tanmatras to, the tanmatras cannot be sensed by the sense object. Whereas the subtle creation of the consciousness which reflects on the inert matter then acquires a sense of ego consciousness that I am, because the consciousness reflecting is sufficient enough for the mind to pick it up. And that creates a sense of individuality. And this exists in all living creatures, irrespective whether they are coming from the animal world or they are coming from insect world or whichever world they are coming from. In their world, they have the sense of I am. So what he says is that these three, knowing, acting, deluding, is just a guna of prakriti. They are not you. They're just a thing of prakriti. But with Purusha getting involved with that, looks like I am doing it. That's the problem. And it binds. Nibaddhanti. Bandhana is imprisonment. So nibaddhanti means it is completely bound. No space anywhere. And that embodied being is called a jiva. And it is attracted to the world of objects around it. And because it has to feel the object around it, it has to have a particular body which can make it feel and perceive that. So the main function performed by the three gunas is to bind that consciousness to this world. And each one can reflect upon itself with these three gunas as though they were real. Any questions on this confusing topic? All okay?
You can continue.
Okay.
You can continue.
Okay, fine. Okay. The sattva guna is the next one, what he talks in the 6th verse. Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat prakasham anamayam sukha sanghena badnati jnanat sangena cha anagha. Anagha is sinless, so that is the name given to Arjuna. But let's look at the other things. So what is sattva? Nirmalatva, because it is pure from the beginning. When the five elements along with the pure mind, that is chitta, along with the intellect, that is what can be perceived, that is the sabgnya or samgnya, which is the power of intellectualization, which can be called as buddhi. They are pure. Prakasham anamayam, is very luminous. It shines. This is what the shine of consciousness is. That is Chidabhasa. So at this level, the mind is completely devoid of any kind of stain. There are no stains at all on the mirror. It's perfectly pure, reflecting. Anamayam is that it is very healthy and hence very harmless. This is where ahimsa starts. Because in purity there is no himsa of body, speech and mind. But it has a
so that state is nothing but Ishvara.
Yes, that is Ishvara. So in the end we have to drop Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara to merge with consciousness. So now he is saying what it does, what this Prakasha does. He says that Sukha Sangena Badnati. Its only problem with sattva is it binds oneself to happiness and keeps on searching for that happiness in every object it finds. So all that we have done from our birth till date is to find that happiness, in pursuit of happiness. So we find a gross thing, we find it is not giving happiness, then we find something else, job, we find that gives happiness, but it eventually doesn't give happiness. Then we buy homes and then we think that gives happiness, and then we find that also doesn't give happiness. Then we have children, we find that gives happiness, but eventually we find that also doesn't give happiness. Then we have this relationship of wife and husband, we think that gives happiness and that doesn't give happiness. So like that, parents, they don't give happiness because they move. So there's always a death of a condition. It can never find happiness. But sattva by nature provides happiness. So whenever we found that happiness in whatever we found as happiness, we want that happiness to be there all the time. And that's attachment. Jnana sangena cha anagaha. So, and attachment to knowledge. Now this is the reason why we are crazy of intellectual world, because the intellect is the one which makes a person to do various things. So in the worldly things, the highest a person can do today is PhD. He can do research on something and get recognized as so and so person, and can get recognized as a Nobel laureate or a Bharat Ratna or this or that, because that is what Jnana can do on the worldly side. And on spiritual side also there is binding, that at the level of sattva, when I lose this tamas and rajas, it binds me to knowledge. That is, I might feel I know everything, which is true, but again that causes rebirth. In a better world, not in this human world, but in a better world, but there is no liberation. It's only realization. What did I realize? That I am a reflected consciousness. That's all I realized. But I can never become consciousness, because I have to drop that sattva also. So one has to go beyond the three gunas, which is what he is going to explain later. But this is a problem with sattva. It has two bondages. One, it binds to sukha. So when we do meditation or when we go to sleep, there is sukha. And whether we are meditating or not, or whether spiritual or not, anybody who sleeps gets into sukha, because it takes itself into subtle realm of existence. So it gets into antakarana, and because it is closer to consciousness, it reflects the peace of that consciousness. And that's the reason we always feel peaceful when there is sleep. and we feel restless when there is no sleep. However, the inert nature is part of tamas. But here there is sattva in that, meaning the world is cut out from itself. So, and hence it retains the purity, and hence the sleep is so looked, or we cherish that sleep. And we are very happy to say that I slept like a log, because now I am very closer to consciousness. So it can give the sukha experience and the jnana. So you always get knowledge. So in sleep there is no knowledge. In sattva there is complete knowledge. But it's again a binding factor. Any questions on sattva, or shall I move into the rajas?
So sattva is binding to the knowledge hunger, right?
Yes.
And that knowledge is also an attachment here.
Yes, knowledge is an attachment. That's what he says. Jnana.
So when you get that Brahma Jnanam, that knowledge is different than this knowledge.
No, they both are same. The Brahma Jnana is realization. But it's not liberation. You are just one step away from liberation.
See, if you are not attached, then it is enlightenment. Now, in this case, you are attached to knowledge. So, without knowledge, there is no moksha.
Correct. You should first.
So, sattva guna is required for moksha, right?
Yes. But you have
that means the binding word is a little bit of confusion here. The thing is, it's a natural. It's not called binding. Such things. It is a connection, right?
No. It's not like that. See that first.
Well, you have binding, no moksha. See, when you my thing is like this. When you have binding, there is no moksha because you are attached. The detachment is nothing but moksha. But moksha is jnana. But naturally, you have to bind.
Yes, you have to bind to understand what is reality, and then remove the bind.
Okay. So it's a step process. First you bind, then detach.
Yes, first you have to come out. See, it's like this. Okay, let me give you a very good simile. Let us say we are swimming in deep waters, which is around 10 feet down. And that is tamas, where you can't see anything at all. Then we are moving up. That movement is rajas, which can take down or it can take up. Wherever it wants, it can take. So now we come to the surface of that water. And so when you see outside, don't you feel happy? So we feel happy, but then we are still in water.
Yeah.
We're still in water, right? The only thing we did was we came from the darkness to light. But did we liberate from that water? Is the question. What do you say?
Till he is out of water, he is inside only. His ability to outside is better when he comes top.
Yes, so instead of being deep down, he is outside, he is able to see. So can he explain this to people who are down there? Can he say how it looks like? That is world. That's the gross world. So basically we are in water. So what he has to do now is to swim to the shore, which is called mukti. Now no more he is in water, for sure. So neither he is in sattva, nor he is moving anywhere, which is rajas, nor he is having gross manifestation, which is tamas. This is the nearest simile I can give you. Okay, so shall I continue?
Yeah, you can go ahead. I understood. Yeah.
Okay. So now when come to the Rajas guna, Rajaha Ragatmakam vidhi Trishna Sanga Samudbhavam Tat Nibhadnati Kaunteya Karma Sangena Dehinam. So yesterday our talk of Vasana, Samskara and Karma starts with Rajas. And another thing is beautiful of Rajas is it creates desires that converts itself into lust, and desire and lust creates lobha, which is greed. So the nature of raga is to be passionate of something, and in English we use this in two separate ways. One, if I say I'm passionate, it means I'm very sensual. At the same time, I will, if I'm working with passion, means that they will feel that I'm working not for monetary gain or anything like that. I'm working for myself. So that's a very daunting word of passion. But here the passion is about sensuality. So we find sensual appetite taken over completely in raga, or in the rajoguna. And second problem, it creates craving for that experience. So the lobha can never be satisfied, the greed can never be satisfied. So it has a lot of problems because it goes away. And let us say I want to do something to someone, and then I do it, and then I will ask for recommendations, and then they recommend, and I want more and more and more and more. So I want to grow that business or whatever profession or whatever I'm doing, I want to grow. So we call that as growth. But however, in spiritual light, this is not growth, it is going towards tamas, because it has the nature of passion and it has nature of craving, trishna, sanga samudbhavam. And this trishna is the one which causes severe attachment, not just attachment, severe attachment, wherein we cannot come out of it. So the nearest of the attachment is family, one's own parent, one's own home, one's own type of upbringing, one's own type of food, like that. And then extends itself into an extended family called as wife and their parents and children and all of that. And then ultimately becomes my family, which is myself, my wife, and my son and daughter, and something like that. So it has trishna. Now he says what happens when this binds. It creates karma. So the samskaras get reproduced in karma. Karma gives enough fruits called as karma phala, and I might like it or I might not like it, which creates furthermore vasanas, and these vasanas will keep on adding to my account, and from then onwards I'll create different type of samskaras through the body, speech and mind, and those body, speech and mind samskaras will then manifest itself as karma. So now I have created a cycle of re-existence all the time. So Rajas guna is to create existence. This, and the sattva guna is to create knowledge. Rajas guna is to create existence through raga and trishna. Whereas the
So sattva does
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this sattva guna will not create any karma.
Sattva guna will never create any karma.
So even if you are attached to this happiness and knowledge and so on, it still doesn't create.
It will create an existence for you, but it doesn't create any karma. Karma is created in the rajas as per the definition here. Karma sangena dehinam. Now, if we were to take this,
Okay. If you want to have, if you have to existence in the sense existence as a GV.
yes, so you need to have the rajas.
Yeah. So no, only with sattva you cannot have a existence as a
Existence at
GV.
all, yes.
Yeah, okay, that is Ishvara actually.
Yes, that
If
is
you have
Ishvara.
only sattva,
Yes.
Ishvara. So Ishvara is also always searching for happiness or is always happy.
It's always happy, but it doesn't know that it is Ishvara. That's the problem with sattva.
Mm.
So what we are doing ultimately is to transcend all the three to make it Parameshwara.
Mm.
That's what the next few after this slokas he says how to work it out.
Okay.
Okay, but first thing, jnana and sukha is part of sattva. The raga and trishna and aspiring for becoming and existing is part of rajas. See, discontentment is rajas, and in everything we are discontented. Actually, we are never content. If you are contented, you will not grow. You will stop your growth. If you are contented with the work you have done so far and you want to eject out of the system and say that that's it, then it's become boring. So the rajas is not there. So it creates turmoil in the person's mind because he wants to grow or he wants to invest himself in something. So now that itself is cut. Otherwise, what he has to do is he has to use this rajas towards sattva so that it moves towards sattva and then he doesn't want anything. He or she doesn't want anything. So till that thing happens, we cannot cut this karma. So we keep on creating karma. Good karma and bad karma, both are created in this because it has a sangha.
Just, I have one question, Vilas.
Yeah.
Whenever we have been talking till now, we have said that if you have only sattva, that also meaning it, you have to have an existence because the no existence comes only if you are gunatita, right? Meaning if you
Correct.
don't have any of the three gunas.
Correct.
So if you are having sattva, then also you have an existence.
Yes.
Meaning sattva, you also have got good karmas. Because of good karma, you're in the sattva zone, and because of that, you are having some punya accumulated. So unless you are existing, that punya will not get also diminished.
The punya and papa keeps on adding up due to meeting of sattva and rajas. So next few slokas, Krishna explains about how does sattva predominate, how does rajas predominate, how does tamas predominate, and they keep on fighting for the existence.
But then even if you are pure sattva, there has to have been an existence, right?
Yes.
Only
No,
if you are not.
The pure sattva can never exist, so it will have the rajas. So now the question comes about the gross and subtle. So there are two states in each of these. So one is a gross state and one is a subtle state, which we looked into earlier. So when we make the action, you can have a subtle state of action and a gross state of action. In tamas also you will have the subtle state of delusion and the gross state of delusion. So all the three will have all subtle and gross. So you'll have 6 different combination out of 3. And that is what is called as existence. So this existence, consciousness, bliss, Sat Chit Ananda, the Sat, that pure existence makes this thing happen. This Maya play out or the Rajas Tamas Sattva play out. So there can't be any state of a pure Sattva, pure Rajas, pure Tamas to be there. It cannot be. It will be always in a combination. So the only way we can do is to transcend all the 3. So you are right. If there is sattva, hypothetically, then there is still continuation of existence. But this punya and papa depends upon whether it is going to tamas or it is going towards sattva. The rajas is flowing towards sattva, it makes it punya because the light is entering. If that Rajas is moving into tamas, it means that it is getting more delusion, more clogged, so it will be doing papa.
Okay. If I understand it right, now you're saying that if it is got sattva, there will be punya, and in order to exhaust the punya, there has to be existence.
Correct, absolutely. Because it is, as per this definition, it is karma
Though
sangena.
it is hypothetical, no, though it is hypothetical that pure sattva can exist, meaning it would be very difficult for pure sattva to exist just like that. But even if pure sattva exists, then there will be punya attached, and so you have to have an existence to
Yes.
spend the punya.
Yes, so now let's say this sukha sangena badnati jnana sangena cha anagaha. So I can become a Brahma. I might not be born as a human, but there is still an existence because I am having sukha. Due to the meditation, I have sukha, and then I have jnana. So I will still have existence. That I has an existence. It is not free out of existence. You are right on that. Okay.
Okay, I understand. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll continue. Now we'll go to tamas. Tamaha tu ajnana jam vidhi mohanam sarvadehinam pramadalasya nidrabihi tat nibadnati bharata. So this one is a very crazy one actually, and it is very much required. Number one, ignorance is bliss. And not knowing something is a very blissful experience by itself. So let's say so many things are happening in this world. If you were to know everything that is happening in this world, it is creates total restlessness in the mind. It's better not to know many things that is happening in this world. And to move into spirituality, you require this ability of cutting yourself out of the world. Otherwise, it creates restlessness. So on the positive note of tamas, you require this ability to create ignorance. You can be ignorant of reality, or you can be ignorant of the maya. You can't be knowledgeable at maya and knowledgeable of reality at the same time. So you require tamas also being there to transcend all the three. So he says, generally tamas has a nature to create ajnana, that is ignorance. Mohanam sarva dehinam. So in all beings, there is two things which comes into force. One is I, second one is mind. These two things have to manifest. And then the moha starts, because we will protect something which is I and mine. You cannot protect anything which is not yours and yours. You will only protect something which is you and yourself. So when I say my wife, I protect. If it is just wife, I will not. If it is my husband, I'll protect. If it is just husband, it doesn't. If it is my bank account, then I'll protect. If it is just bank account, I don't care, because bank account is bank account. It doesn't matter. If it is my home, I will have to protect. If it is just home, I don't care. So it has this ability of catching on to me and mine, these two things. Pramada alasya nidravihi. Pramada is heedlessness. So, or inadvertence. Alasya is laziness. Nidravihi is sleep. So we sleep to the reality from morning till night and the next day, like that forever. All beings sleep to the reality. That's the beauty of this tamas. And that's the reason it's called ignorance is bliss. Now, when the spirituality happens, it shakes the foundation of tamas. So you will stop reacting to the world and you start reacting to yourself, which is rajas, which is moving it into karma, and then shows the light, which is sattva. So the problem, or rather the quality of tamas, is that it creates mohana, pramada, alasya, nidra and ajnana. And all of this binds that being. So what is the guna of sattva? In its nature, lakshana is nirmalam, stainless. The characteristics of sattva is prakasha, being luminous, and anamayam is very healthy and very harmless. And what it does as a bandhana is to create sukha, and it binds mind to that, and jnana sangena, so by knowledge. So it creates an ego sense later through rajas because of action, and develops further into complete egocentric mind in tamas. Because the more the jnana, the more the ignorance gets shaped up in that person, because he becomes I and mine. Whereas when it comes to the rag from the rajas, it creates ragatmakam, that is filled with passion for sensuality. And because senses binds the sense object, it creates trishna. Trishna is what I can say, mirage, if we were to take. So it creates that unending thirst for the senses, and it creates sangha, attachment, and it pulls karma. So it becomes karma sangena. When we come to tamas, it is ajnana, which is ignorance, creates mohana, that is delusion, and aviveka, cannot discriminate between good and bad. The heavier it is, the heavier the person feels. So what he has to do today, he will try to procrastinate it to tomorrow or future. So generally we have this ability of saying that, okay, at present, you see, I am supposed to be working now, and all of this can be looked into later. It's not so urgently required. We have a lot of time. So tamas has the ability to add time. It will create mind to feel there is a past, there is a present, and there is a future. So for all product outcomes and for everything in this world, we have a projection. We compare the past, we measure it in the present, and we project the future. So past, present, future gets created in tamas. There's nowhere else it can get created, and hence it is nidra. And because there is nidra, there is pramada, heedlessness, and alasya, laziness. So I'll become lazy towards spirituality and more involved in the worldly affairs. And since rajas has the ability to flow, it flows normally towards tamas than in sattva, because sattva is upward directional, which is going to take it in some verse. He is going to say how sattva moves, how rajas moves, and how tamas. So before we go there, one word here is that sattva moves above, rajas stays wherever it is, tamas moves down. So when we go totally tamasic, the life existence will be accordingly to that. So becomes more downward oriented. Whereas the more the sattvic, the rajas is going to flow towards, that movement is towards sattvic, then the person becomes more and more purified and hence goes up. His mind gets elevated. Whereas if he is in rajas all the time without being in much in sattva, more in rajas and less in tamas, that person stays wherever he is, or the mind stays wherever in it. So this is how they bind. So in conclusion, if we were to see, sattva opposed to tamas is prakasha, and it's an antidote to tamasic characteristics of mohana and aviveka. Whereas sattva opposed to rajas, anamayam, that puts an end to the sorrow, is an antidote to the rajas characteristics of trishna and sangha. Because you can filter out the happiness nature in it, the rajasic person, if he were to get contented with whatever he is getting, happiness starts flowing into rajas. Or rather, the tamas and sattva, the rajas and sattva merge together and drop the tamasic attitude from the mind. So it becomes more prakasha, more illuminating. So I will talk about this last verse for now and we will end it. Sattvam sukhes sanjayati rajah karmani bharata jnanam avrityatu tamaha pramade sanjayati uta. So in conclusion, again he says sattva attaches to happiness, rajas to activities which causes karma and becomes bondage, but tamas removes the knowledge and attaches him to pramada. So all the three gunas are addiction, and anything that is addicting always binds. And the tamas is the strongest chain in this binding. Rajas is the middling, that is, it is in the middle. And sattva is the lightest chain. So what we can do is to cut the chain through sattva. Then the tamas goes away forever. And rajas remains for some time and it gets merged out or evaporated. So we will see how to do that on Monday. Any questions?
Anyway, tamas is,
Sattva, rajas and yeah, you go ahead, Lata. I don't have a big question.
I also don't have big questions. So I think without tamas you cannot be in this world.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
tamas is required.
Yeah. Earlier also I said tamas is very much required. Otherwise you cannot sleep, you cannot get into anything at all.
So it is not possible to get rid of tamas at all.
No, one cannot get rid of all the three gunas. It's not possible. It is the
It is not possible. Then you are not there actually in this
Yes.
body.
yes, that's correct. So if I am still having a body means that I still have rajas, tamas, sattva.
Yeah. So you have to go above that, beyond that, and not get affected by it. But
Yes.
it will be there.
Yes. See, this is the guna of prakriti. It is not my guna. It is the guna of prakriti. So we are trying to understand what these three gunas are. It's not about eliminating something and keeping something. No, that is not possible.
This tamas guna is having a combination of two things. One is that violence. Another is for completely sleep. Maybe
Tamas is violence, rajas is the one which creates violence.
Rajas creates movement, and hence the violent tendency starts with the mind because it is moving. Anything that moves makes things insecure. So the insecurity causes violence. It's not the tamas which creates violence. Tamas creates only delusion that what you are thinking is true. So let's say I took out the example of India flag.
Ignorance.
Yes, I took out that day an example of India flag and American flag, right? I can create violence out of just a flag because there is movement. The movement creates insecurity and instability, and because of that, I feel that somebody is doing something, and then I want to have a violent overturn because that creates tamasic attitude of delusion. I feel I'm an Indian.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm neither Indian nor American nor anything, actually, to be honest. But I feel I'm Indian. And then all the things will start because there should be movement. The movement is I'm an Indian. When the moment it recognizes as an Indian, then it gets into tamasic. It doesn't get into sattva. So I don't see another human being as a human being. Now I see him as a, let us say, Pakistan or Chinese or some other country which I don't like. So then it goes into violence because there is delusion. If it goes into rajas only, let's say I love America. So if I land in America, what's the expectation? I would be happy because it is rajasic, which is ragatmakam. It creates passion of senses. So now the sense is very happy that wow, I landed in America. So now what I do is I compare between my life which was there in India versus the life I'm leading in America. So then if it goes to 75 rupees per dollar, I'm very happy because now I can make more money and all of that. So that creates Trishna and Sangha. So this is how it works. So in this particular case, the moment somebody attaches himself to be an American, an Indian go into America and he wants to settle down in America, and then he is pleading and he got his green card, then he got his citizenship also changed. Okay, so he got into tamas. From rajas he moved into tamas. Now he starts believing that he himself is an American, whereas he's born as an Indian, but he believes that he's an American. So this is what that ignorance can do.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we can see it in many of our friends who have gone to from India, they have gone to Sweden or to Germany, or they have become that country's nationality. You can find in their words how tamasic they have become from what they were. It's a very easy way to see.
Yeah, correct.
And they start believing they are that.
They forget their root.
Yes, and that is what tamas can do. That will make you forget the root. So now we have forgotten our roots. We were supposed to be pure people, and now pure consciousness. We have become divided consciousness called as beings or jiva. So now we are wanting to go back to where we belong.
Yes, it is 9:30 crossed.
Yes, so let us end this.
We can continue Monday.
Continue on Monday. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Vilas.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you. Bye.